The Cultural Resources Stewardship section of the Montgomery County Department of Parks oversees historic sites that exist on park properties. One of those is the Darby Store in Beallsville, Maryland, an early 20th century general store that lets visitors experience the county's past. Here's more.
The Darby Store was built in 1910 by Harry Clay Darby. He purchased this land in 1908, and according to the ledgers that we have, or that we've seen from the site, that he already had a store here in 1908, probably in a building that stood on this site beforehand. This has always been a commercial corner since the mid-19th century, and so you can hear the trucks and cars going by today. Obviously, they were horses back in those days, but it was a busy corner, and that's probably one of the reasons that he opened a store here. Harry was very successful, and in 1921 he built the house that's next door. Beautiful colonial revival house. So the store was doing super well, and after World War II, Harry's son, Harry Dunbar Darby, took over the store, and he ran it until the early 1960s. By that point, country stores, corner stores like this were becoming somewhat obsolete. They were being replaced by five and dimes and department stores, so this wasn't as viable, economically as viable as it had been before then. So he closed the store in the early 1960s, according to his daughter. And then the store was basically used for storage, and after he passed away, his estate sold it in 2004 to the Department of Parks. It was purchased with legacy open space funds, and it's not just the store and the house that was purchased, it's all of the 25-acre property. So there's beautiful land behind the store, and it's almost contiguous with parkland that's just down the road from here. And then in 2007, we started planning for what are we going to do with this, because the roof was in terrible condition. If it was raining outside, you needed an umbrella inside. It was just in terrible, terrible shape. And so we hired an architects and engineers, and we developed a plan for rehabilitating the building. The rehabilitation of the store took quite a bit of time. We started it in 2010 with cleaning out the building and stabilizing the structure. And then in 2011, we hired expert house movers to pick up the building and move it back. So they moved it over 27 feet this way and about 27 feet back from the intersection. They're the company that moved the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. And when we moved the building over, we put it on top of a full basement. The building had never had a full basement, so now anybody who's a proprietor here has a lot of storage room in the basement, which makes it a much more functional building. And then our carpenters gained an awful lot of experience in dealing with a historic building by working on this structure, and in fact, when it was finished, they received a Montgomery County Preservation Award for their work, for the high standard of the work that they did here. One of the things that Parks is especially proud of in this rehabilitation, this preservation project, is that we made this building accessible to people with disabilities. The building never had a sidewalk coming up to it, and today when you park in the parking lot behind the building, which had never been there before, if you are in a wheelchair, you can very easily come up to the building and go inside. Once you're inside the building, there's some wonderful historic aspects of it. The ceiling before was a patchwork of many, many, many different patterns. We counted at least 7. But we decided rather than trying to recreate that mishmash of patterns, we selected a single one. Also, you'll notice that there's some hanging pendant lights. On the research that we did looking at historic photographs, we selected a style that we thought would be appropriate for the store. But one of the special features in there is a nail bin on the wall, and it had become old and faded, and we invited Donna Darby Rowe, who's the granddaughter of the original proprietor, to come with her family, and she came with her daughter and her son and her grandchildren, and they repainted the nail bin and very meticulously painted over each and every number, and that was a really fun afternoon. Once the building was completed here, the rehabilitation was completed, we put out, we issued a request for proposals for a tenant, and a lot of people came out and looked at it, and we received this successful proposal from Joe Brown.
Grew up in Barnesville, commuted to Beallsville High School. My grandfather has volunteered for 60 years at the firehouse across the street. I've been near this intersection my entire life and saw the Darby Store in all its phases. And through the course of our other business, it was brought to my attention that the Darby Store was coming up for rent. And you don't pass a store like this for that many years and not have to put your name in the hat. We have a pasture-based farming operation that does pasture-raised beef and pork and chicken, and we were looking for a retail outlet to sell some local goods and some farm-to-table type products. And when the store became available, we decided to put an application in. So we filled out the lease application and took, I guess, possession of the store in 2015. At that time, the sale of consumable products was not permitted. We worked over the next 2 years with Park and Planning and Montgomery County itself to go through the permit process to be able to sell consumable products. So we've only had farm-to-table products for about 6 months, but that's really, before that we specialized in kind of local home decor and artisans, but once we were able to add farm-to-table products and feature a lot of local producers and things, we've really seen kind of an increase in people utilizing the store and visiting.
Beautiful. I love the material. And then I can wear it and eat popcorn.
There you go.
We've kind of designated a circle around Sugarloaf Mountain, both Frederick and Montgomery County, as the Sugarloaf Valley. And we like to think of ourselves as the unofficial visitor center of the Sugarloaf Valley. We have local books, local tour guides that if you are not from here, that it would take you a long time to figure out all the little neat intricacies of what's around here. And we're pretty proud of this area of the county and the agricultural reserve and the work and the citizens that are up here and the proprietors of the businesses. So we're hoping that with this store, that it gives folks that are visiting the first place to stop, get some refreshments, get some local gifts, and then they can continue their tour of the area. We've gone and found kind of the neatest things from, first and foremost, the Agricultural Reserve of Montgomery County, and kind of went out to the Chesapeake watershed from there as setting up a store that's curated in a way that pays homage to the Maryland mercantile stores that used to dot all over the Chesapeake Bay.
Being able to show people tangible aspects of history is so important. I mean, when we're in school, we're looking at textbooks or we're looking at our computer screens as it is now for kids, and everything's very flat, and it doesn't come to life the way it does when you actually get to go inside a building and see what a store looked like 100 or 120 years ago. I think it spurs the imagination and it gives people an appreciation for their past. It gives them an understanding for what their ancestors, their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, how they lived.
To see folks come shop, get something to drink or a local ice cream and just sit down on the porch and just take in what the Up County has to offer is kind of just a very rewarding experience.
To learn more about the Darby Store, go to this website,